This is the lecture for Ancient and Medieval History for Wednesday, the 13th of April, 2021. And where we've been is Arabia, where we have been learning about Mohammed, who was born in the early 600s AD, marries a wealthy widow, gets enough free time to hear the voice of an angel telling him what God wants, and won't shut up about it to the point where he threatens the local tourist industry, is chased out of town by lynchers who want to kill him. This is the beginning of Islamic time. This is the Hajira, the flight from Mecca.
Welcome.
And in Medina, to the north of Mecca, Mohammed becomes the leading citizen, and he uses that power to build an army that is going to go south and spread the word of God by the sword. First target is Mecca. God cleanses the Kaaba of the dark false gods and demons, becomes the center of Islamic worship, and Muhammad gives the people of Mecca the choices to leave, convert, or die. Now, in the future, in other places beyond Mecca, but not including Mecca, because Mecca is a special holy place, the Muslim armies, when they conquer, will not permit pagans. They either convert or die, and maybe they're allowed to leave. Jews and Christians are offered conversion to Islam. Muslims believe, after all, that Muhammad's vision is the third and best means by which God is trying to communicate to us. But Jews and Christians will be allowed to live, in most cases, under Islamic rule as kafir, or kufar, depending upon your variant of Arabic. In either case, kafir, kufar mean unbeliever, infidel. And to live as a kafir or a kufar in an Islamic society under Shariat Law means that you pay many more taxes, you have far fewer rights. If you are ever in a dispute with a Muslim, you will lose. It's like going to the People's Republic of China today as an American citizen. Getting involved in a dispute with the Chinese, you will lose in their courts. Whether or not you are wrong or not doesn't matter. For them, it's a matter of revenge against the West. And if a faithful person wants to, they can put their hand on your shoulder and take you to the slave market. So your freedom to exist as a Jew or as a Muslim or as a Christian within Islamic society, traditional Shariat Law Islamic society, is absolutely contingent on you not getting them irritated at you. Because if they do get irritated at you, it's over. So, let's look at the word Sharia. It's also called Sharia in the older translations. Sharia, S-H-A-R-I-A, probably want to write it down, is Islamic law. Sharia is Islamic law. Particularly, it is Quranic law. Remember, the Quran, K-O-R-A-N, is the holy book of Islam. So Sharia law is the law of the Quran. It would be the same as using the laws that are written in the time of Moses for the Israelites who are living after having escaped from Egypt today in a modern country. The Deuteronomical law, for example. Laws that say that if you don't keep the Sabbath, you'll be stoned to death. That kind of law. A law rooted in religion, not the state, and a law that is absolutely brutal and vicious by modern standards. Sharia law, which is still the law of the land in places like Saudi Arabia, have an interesting penalty for thieves. And part of me, as a person who can't stand those cowardly little jerks, think it's not a bad idea on some level. If you're caught, found guilty of thievery, if any of you know, raise your hand if you do. Yes?
They cut the hand that you stole with.
Yes! So, if you're a right-handed thief, chop chop, bye-bye hand. See, I said raise your hand. Get it? That was a little joke there. You get your hand chopped off. If you're found guilty of thievery a second time, the other hand gets chopped off.
What about a third time? Then your head.
Then your head, in effect. If you are a person who was raised Muslim and you convert away from Islam, your family has the right to kill you. This is called honor killing. Now, the Romans did stuff like this. The paterfamilias could kill you if you were going to dishonor the family. But there are people in Europe and the United States today who have been killed by family members in honor killings. Hopefully our justice system has caught all of these people and thrown them in jail or sent them to the electric chair or whatever, the lethal injection, whatever your state uses for a death penalty or life in prison. Because it's a pretty cold, cruel thing. It often involves little girls for some reason. Sharia law promises or allows polygamy, which is the marriage of one man to many wives. They're not by any means the only ones that practice polygamy. Mormons in the old days, before the establishment of the state of Utah, practiced polygamy. One husband, many wives. The Chinese practiced polygamy up through the time of the communist system. And to this day, leaders of the Communist Party have several mistresses. It's considered a status symbol. But Sharia, in particular, allows for many wives and people who are not wives, concubines, and so forth. The Sultan in Constantinople famously had harems, or harems. Women who lived in a seraglio, separated from the world, guarded by eunuchs. Eunuchs are boys that have their boy parts cut off. Because that way the Sultan will know that his harem girls are not being messed with by any of their guards. Sharia law also permits child marriage. Muhammad himself marries Aisha. Aisha is the daughter of Abu Bakr, who's going to become one of Islam's first leaders and one of Muhammad's chief lieutenants. Aisha's 6. They consummate the marriage when she turns 9. To this day, isolated communities that follow Sharia law have the daughter's marriage arranged by their father, often without any consultation with the daughter. The marriage can happen by American standards extremely young. And my wife had a friend in Maine who was from the Middle East. I'm not going to go into great specifics. Her divorced husband tried getting her adolescent, pubescent, I'm talking middle school age daughter, to marry a middle-aged buddy of his. And it required violence on the part of the wife's family, her brother in particular, to keep the daughter from being stolen by her father and sent away. And this is in the United States. So, Sharia law allows for slavery. In fact, slavery still exists. It's alive and well in Saudi Arabia and in other countries of the Arabian Peninsula. I'm not talking any kind of, I'm talking black slavery. Getting black slaves from Africa is still something that's done by the Saudis and by others. Now, Max Wilderson, who you may remember, graduated from here just recently, had an older brother who was in college, and he was roommates with a Saudi guy, or friends with him anyway, he was a neighbor. And Max's older brother challenged the guy on having black African slaves in his homeland. He says, we don't call them slaves. They're not slaves. They're servants. And they have it pretty good. Their food is provided. Their shelter is provided. Their health care is provided. We take care of them very well. They just, they just have simple duties and they're happy. And Max's older brother said, hey, that doesn't sound like a bad deal. Maybe I should be a servant. You don't want to be a servant. No, you don't ever want to be a servant. The reality came out in that answer. They're slaves. Now, as you will learn next year, the British actually spend a good amount of time, blood, and treasure trying to stop this slave trade from black Africa to Arabia by conquering the Nile River Valley and blocking the slave trade. And it did reduce the slave trade while the British were there, but the British are no longer there. Today, black slavery exists in Saudi, among other places. I'm not saying that Sharia law is bad. I'm an American. I like English common law. I like the law. I mean, I think our legal system right now is screwed up 20 ways from Sunday, but that's a personal opinion. I think that the basis of that law, the Constitution, English common law, laws that allow for inalienable individual human rights, laws that are based in our Bill of Rights of freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and so forth. That's what I am comfortable with. I also, for what it's worth, was comfortable when the Turks, before the current Erdogan regime, had modernized their system. The Turks were an Islamic country. In the 1920s, a nationalist leader named Ataturk, which means father of the Turks, creates in Turkey the first modern Islamic country. Turkish women got the vote in the 1920s, less than 10 years after we gave women the vote. And from the 1920s until the mid-1990s, Turkey was an example of what an Islamic country could be if it joined the modern world. Another country that did this successfully from the 1950s until the late 1970s was Iran, under the Shah. The Shah, their emperor, brought modernization to Iran. They created suburbs, a middle class. And it was the reaction against this Americanized, Europeanized, Westernized, modern middle class within Iran that led to the fundamentalists taking over and Iran becoming the center of global terrorism, which has been since 1978. Sharia law is like the Quran. Words from 1400 years ago, rooted in assumptions about life, the universe, and everything that are from the Dark Ages. And this reality, bless you, tissues over there if you need it. This reality, everyone sneezes, God. There should be a child's book. Everyone sneezes. Instead, there's a child's book that's much more disgusting. I know, we got it for our nephew just to get my best friends. It's like getting your friend's children drums. It's something you don't do unless you really don't like your friends very much. Don't ever get your friend's children drums or loud musical instruments or anything like that because they will use them.
We had a
Here's an
child.
electric guitar.
Little, and my brother.
Oh gosh. Yeah. That's fun stuff. Don't get them a chemistry set either unless they know what they're doing.
You're right. Just get them.
The thing about chemistry sets is if you don't properly supervise the kid, they can make explosives by accident. Although I'm sure these days they neuter the chemistry
Are you
sets.
speaking from experience?
No, I'm speaking because I never was allowed to have a chemistry set because
You knew what you were doing?
let's just say my mom trusted me with weapons, but she did not trust me with a
That doesn't make
chemistry set. It makes total sense. I was very responsible with guns and knives. I still am. I only shoot those people that need it. I'm joking!
So then what do you do for target practice?
Mr. Tenorio, did you ever have Nerf guns?
We had water guns. Nerf guns are after my time. We also had cap guns. Now cap guns are cool. Cap guns they have real gunpowder little pods, and you get the smell and the sound, and it's great. They don't shoot anything. It just makes noise.
I wish they did shoot something.
Yeah. Later on, they had laser tag and they had paintball. And I have played paintball, and it's fun. If you've never played paintball, it's a blast.
It hurt.
You gotta wear your glasses.
Yeah. On my first time playing paintball, I got shot right in the throat, and I couldn't breathe for like.
Yeah, the thing about paintball is it can hurt.
I played paintball once with some of my friends, but the thing was, there was a guy who came along. He was a Marine, and he played against us. It wasn't even fair.
I first played paintball with Vietnam veterans. What did he do? What are some of the things he did?
He would so there was like this wooden barrier, and
Yep.
then he was and then there were people hiding behind it, and there's it's just these wooden slats, and you can't shoot through them.
Yep.
But you can see behind it, and so he could see that there were 3 people behind it, and then he got up behind it, and then his plan was to shove it out of the way. Except the thing is, but it was buried in the ground, so he needed to build up force. And so he ran back 10 feet and just had us firing for him. And then he ran and body slammed it, except he went through it instead.
So did he actually tackle the people on the other side?
No, it was 3 boards broke, and then he just went his shoulder went through it, and then he kind of just reacted in time, grabbed his gun and shot all of them.
Well, that stuff happened in trench warfare. Marines did that to the Germans in World War I.
The guy would also it's a big weapon. It's probably 3. It was probably 3 feet, and he would roll with it.
Mm-hmm.
He would just somehow tuck it into his waistband or something and just roll, and then he'd pull it out immediately, and then you'd just be covered in paint within 5 seconds.
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. I love the Marine Corps. That's that. He was trained in real combat.
The guy brought a ghillie suit with him. It's so stupid. The guy came with 2 different bags. One of them was with he wore regularly, and that was the thing that he normally wore.
Yeah.
The thing was, it was an 80-pound weighted vest and then 40-pound weighted leggings, so he couldn't feel anything that hit him. But he was the guy was fast as well when wearing it. And then
so you could hit him and he wouldn't know.
Well, he could feel it, but it didn't hurt him. So he had he just didn't care.
Yeah.
And then the other one was he wore a ghillie suit, and then he had a sniper, and so he'd be sitting in a corner of the map, and then everyone else would be trying to get the flag, and then he just sniped them all.
Yeah.
And then that was the end of the game.
Yeah, that's funny. No, we had some guys that weren't quite to that extreme, but they basically played a stalking game like they learned in the jungles of Vietnam. And I just wanted to play capture the flag and run around. So I got killed in the first 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, and so did most of us. And then they sniped at each other for the next 2 hours. It was obnoxious.
He also brought a fully automatic paintball gun.
That's what I had.
But the thing was,
fun.
he gave it to someone else because he was if I use this isn't going to be fair.
Yeah. Oh, he had
and then he grabbed his and then he grabbed a regular one of his other guns.
Yep.
But the thing was, he could pull the trigger so quickly, it was faster than him than the automatic
That's
paintball gun. So he would fire 8 shots, and by the time you got hit by 1, 7 more were coming at you.
That's hilarious. That will hurt too.
Yeah, it was bad.
Okay, I part of me wants to play with him now because I don't expect to win, but I'd expect to learn things.
One more.
Anyway, what?
This dude on Saturday when we were playing,
Yep.
he had a ghillie suit, and he also had a ghillie suit for his beard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You got like a huge beard in the other.
You gotta hide it.
Yeah.
So you have a veil, a man veil. It's a manly veil. Speaking of veils, hijabs and burqas.
Segue.
Women,
Women.
you are distractions of sin. Now,
I know, right?
that's because you're so bleeping beautiful. We don't want temptation from you. So, you've got to cover yourself. Now, fundamentalists in all societies tend to have trouble with sex, at least in certain respects. So, the traditional Islamic version of this is that you women have to understand your evil power. And for the sake of the rest of us and the virtue of the people around you, you must conceal your form. So the hijab is a partial covering. So you cover your face except for your eyes. By the way, the eyes can be very expressive. I once shared a plane with a Saudi couple, husband and wife, and her eyes. I mean, I'm a happily married man, very faithful, but her eyes were amazing. No, and it was the way she was expressive with them. Eyes can be very expressive things. You might not think about it, but they can.
Especially
Yeah.
during COVID, you can tell everyone's emotions because of
Oh
their
yeah,
eyes.
you actually your generation's probably going to be better than that at that than I ever will be, because at a formative point you learned how to judge people by their expressions in their eyes. A burqa is a full bore body covering. It's like wearing a sack, and sometimes in Saudi, you basically you look like a what is it? Like a Hershey's Kiss. You're sort of this swarmy, ghosty thing, and instead of having eye holes, there's this veil that's part of the hood that you're wearing, and you look through like a silk veil with a crosshatch veil of cotton over it. So nobody's catching anything. You wear gloves, you wear shoes, so there's no flesh. But it's also traditional in Islamic societies for there to be belly dancers and dancing girls. Now, they tend to cover themselves with cloth, but there's cloth and then there's cloth. In any event, just understand that the Shariat law as regards women, in a Sharia country, you females are not really wise to go out by yourselves. If you go out by yourselves and somebody rapes you, it's your fault because you were out without a male protector. In fact, to accuse somebody of rape, you need 3 witnesses. Most scumbucket need to die rapists, and I do believe in the death penalty for rapists, don't do what they do with 2 witnesses besides yourself around. It is very wise for women in Sharia countries to remain indoors and only go out in groups with a male protector or guide or guard. And Western women who are proud in this way, who go to Islamic countries, quickly learn that if they want to stay there, they have to put on a veil and they have to adapt their behavior, because this ain't Germany and this ain't the United States. Really, you have to adapt. If you're in somebody else's country, you have to figure out their ways. Otherwise, you will be beaten. Yeah, that happens too. Women who break. This is happening in Afghanistan now. Afghanistan, remember, was free for 20 years, relatively free, and now it's under the Taliban again. And the Taliban follows strict Sharia law. So a woman that goes out in public who is not properly covered will be beaten by Taliban militia.
Didn't people get angry, later in Singapore or something?
Yeah, that's another thing.
He got canned.
Yeah, and he should have been.
Yeah.
Idiot. You don't litter unless you're in China. Everybody litters. But in Japan and Singapore, they're very clean about things like that. Plus, you're going. Yeah.
Like that.
Plus, you've got in Japan some jackanapes, American tourists who went to the suicide forest The thing about Japan is it has a culture of harikiri and seppuku, which is, you know how Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back says, there is no try, do or do not. Well, in Japan, traditional Japan, old-fashioned pre-American victory in World War II Japan, um, if you do not, you die. You kill yourself to preserve your honor. But that still happens. Every year, people full of promise like yourselves don't get into Tokyo University. And many of them kill themselves. And there's a forest that's very famous. It's a place where people go when they're going to end their lives. And the Japanese are much more open to this than anyone else. Their traditional society says do or do not. And if you do not, you know what a ronin is? A ronin is a samurai who lives longer than his master. If a samurai is in battle and his daimyo, his master, is killed, and the ronin, the samurai survives, the moment he learns that his lord is dead, he's supposed to commit ritual suicide. And if he doesn't do that, he's a ronin. He's this dishonored criminal samurai. He's scum, and is treated like scum by absolutely everyone. So some jack idiot American, I don't bad word. He went to the suicide forest and did a YouTube video or videos where he made fun of people who killed themselves. And he is lucky that the Japanese gave him to us and kicked him out of the country, because there were many Japanese that wanted to do permanent damage to this guy. And I don't blame them. No, this is bad. So anyway, yeah, Shariat law is different. And part of the difference is it's based in the Quran, and the Quran is written in Muhammad's words, the words of a 7th century Arab. Now, after this, it's the time of the Great Islamic Conquests. Muhammad spends the rest of his life unifying Arabia under Islam, and he does. All the Arabian Peninsula is Islamic by the time Muhammad dies. In the time of Muhammad's children, quicker than the Alexander the Great conquest, the Persian Empire, which has stood against the Romans for hundreds and hundreds of years, is conquered, toot sweet, by the Arab Muslims. And the Zoroastrians become, for the most part, they become Muslims. Also, when the Muslims conquer the Persian Empire, they get all of that Persian knowledge. They get the libraries, the books, the scientists, the people. And since most of them are going to convert to Islam, these desert barbarians suddenly get one of the world's great civilizations and absorb it. And therefore, Islamic civilization in the Middle Ages is going to have many, many scientific achievements. But that's not all. In the time of Muhammad's grandchildren, they conquer Syria, Judea, Egypt, Cyrenaica, Tripolitania, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco. So now the entire, everywhere from the Indus River all the way to the Atlantic Ocean is one giant Islamic empire. They're already bigger than Rome. They're already bigger than Persia. They're already bigger than Alexander the Great. And then they go north into Europe. And at the Battle of Tours on 10th, well, it's actually a 3-day battle, around 10th October 732, an Islamic army, a major one, is in western France, up here. The Muslims have conquered most of the Iberian Peninsula, and they're in the process of conquering France. And it's only in northwest France in a 3-day battle where Charles Martel, the leader of the Merovingian Franks, Charles is Charles. Martel means the hammer. Charles the Hammer Martel of the Merovingian Franks, boom, holds the line against the Arabs. Boom, holds the line against the Arabs again. And on the 3rd day, boom, breaks the back of the Arab army, and it scatters and goes back across the Pyrenees. This is a close-run battle. It is a bloodbath, but the Christian, they're not knights yet, but the Christian warriors under Charles Martel, under Charles the Hammer, the Franks, and their allies, knock the Muslims back into Spain and Portugal. The only parts of Spain and Portugal not conquered are up here near the northern coast. There are mountains called the Cantabrian Alps. They're very tall, they're very rough, and the Christians hold out there independently. But everywhere except up here in the Cantabrian Alps is everywhere except up here in the Cantabrian Alps is under Islamic rule. So how do they conquer everything from Portugal to Pakistan? Well, there are two reasons. One, these are the Bedouin Arabs who live in the Arabian deserts. The Arabian deserts are one of the harshest places on earth to live. You don't live there if you're weak. A person from the Arabian desert who lives in the old style will look at anyone from a civilized country, even if they're in what we would call perfect shape, and they're water fat. They're water fat. They're used to drinking water as much as they want. They're used to drinking water all the time. Actually, our military training these days has people mainlining water constantly because it helps the body to metabolize nutrients better, and it basically, we think now that drinking a lot of water is very good for your health, especially if you're a young person who's, preparing their body and mind to be a soldier. But the Arabs grow up with a paucity of water, and therefore they have a thinness that comes from their flesh not being plumped by having enough water. So they would call most of our warriors water fat. They do. They still do to this day. These guys are desert tough. They live with pain like we live with normal. They live in the area that is so hot in the daytime you can die. Even if they had enough water. The Arabian desert is just so hot. And at night it gets cold. I don't mean a little cold. I mean really cold. People think of the Arabian desert as a super hot place, and in the daytime it is. But at nighttime, it is super cold. How does an Arab drink water? They don't just glug it. They do this. Which is something I try to do to an extent. Why? Moistens the flesh in your mouth. You're taking more time. It's giving the water a chance to have maximum effect. If you just glug it, you need more water to moisten all of the tissues of your mouth. Also, Arabs tend to breathe in through their nose and out through their mouth. Why? Because this lets a lot of moisture out. This also lets a lot of dry in. So if you can breathe mostly through your nose, especially breathing in, you're limiting the super dry air to your nostrils, and you're not drying out all the tissues of your mouth. Everything in Arabia and the Bedouin culture of Arabia is oriented towards the preservation of water and survival in this difficult environment. Camels are stubborn animals. They're not very bright either, but they can survive. What that hump is, either a Batrachian camel or I forget the other kind. There are one humpers and two humpers among the camels. But the humps are basically bits of flesh that are suffused with water. And when a camel is more and more and more in the desert, their hump gets smaller and smaller and smaller until the hump dries out, at which point, if you don't get the camel more water, he's going to die. But a camel can cross desert areas without water like no horse can. The Arabians are also known as breeders of really probably the best strains of horse flesh on the planet. I'm not a horse guy. I can't tell you why. Some of you are people who understand horses very well, and you could probably explain it. In fact, if any of you want to explain why Arabian horses are just so fine, I'd be happy to hear it. I take it for granted. They do look very well proportioned, very muscular when they're healthy, very pretty. They move well too. Okay. So what that means is the average Arab soldier is physically tougher than anyone he's going to meet. Is he bigger? No. Is he stronger? No. But he's used to living with pain and privation like nobody else. And in violence, you've got to be willing to take pain to give it. You hit somebody, your hand's going to hurt. But if you're not willing to accept the pain to your knuckles, you will not be able to deliver the pain to that guy's jaw. You have to, it's shooting a gun. My wife shoots lighter ammunition than I do because she's a girl. And that's okay. She's actually an incredibly good shot. She's got better eyesight than I do, and she started shooting very younger than I did. But I want a big bullet going down range if I ever have to shoot someone, because I want the bullet to hurt them, to traumatize them. If I'm not willing to get the kick and absorb the sound of the heavier round, they're not going to get hit with something as big as they might. You shoot a mouse gun at a human being, and you might have to shoot them 8 or 9 times to hit something vital. You shoot somebody with a proper gun that has stopping power, you might not need to hit them more than once. It depends on where you hit them, of course, and who they are. But a bigger round that is harder to shoot in terms of big recoil and big noise is going to probably deliver more kinetic energy to your target. So because they're desert tough, the Arab soldiers are able to outfight. In other words, they're willing to take more pain in order to win than most of the people they fight. So they're desert tough. That's one reason. The other is the promise of paradise. The Quran says that the jihadi, those who die shaheed, those who die as martyrs in battle in a holy war, will go straight to paradise. But not just any part of paradise, a special part of paradise for the shaheed, for the martyrs, for the holy warriors, for those who died in battle. And this is, I told you about this at the beginning of the year. Does anyone want to describe what it's like? You don't have to if you don't want to, because it's kind of but okay, hopefully you remember. Yes?
Basically, it's like an eternal paradise with, like, especially for men, with their
Yes.
heart's desires.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you've got fountains, you've got fruit trees, you've got sweetmeats, you've got incense, and you've got 72 buxom sex kittens given to you by God. They are virgins because whatever. And that's God's reward. Forever, you get to live in this garden of earthly delights, which is perfectly designed for heterosexual young men from the desert. Woo! And therefore, in any given battle, there is a significant proportion of the Islamic soldiers who are ready to die right now, right here, to achieve victory. Now, it's one thing if you're flying in a plane in battle and your plane gets damaged and you're going down and you can't hit the cylinder. So if you're going to die, if I'm going to die, I'm going to take some of you bleeps with me, and you aim at an enemy warship or an enemy a building or an enemy tank or something. Okay, that is, I'm going to die anyway, I can't get out, I might as well try to kill the enemy while I'm going out of this world. That is a situation that some people choose to make into an attack. Like the Japanese kamikaze, Arab soldiers from the beginning of a battle can be part of a unit whose purpose is to die. You're going to die today. You're going to attack frontally that enemy unit at that enemy position. They have all the advantages. If you survive, it will be a miracle. We don't expect you to survive. We don't want you to survive. We want you to die killing the enemy and distracting them, so the rest of our army can sneak around the back and hit them from behind. Now, that's different from being in a plane that gets hit and you're going down, you're going to die anyways, you might as well kill some of the enemy. That is like the Japanese kamikaze training to take off and fly their plane and aim it, but not worry too much about landing. The 9/11 terrorists did the same thing. Because a kamikaze on the morning of their last day will have clipped their fingernails and put them in a sandalwood box because it's the only thing their family will have to bury or cremate. They'll write their death poem. They'll drink their sake in front of a Shinto priest. They'll get into their planes. They'll take off. They'll join a flying chrysanthemum, a kiku suite, which is a formation of kamikaze, wing their way towards the American fleet and die diving on the biggest American warship they can find. Aircraft carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, whatever they can find, the bigger the better, with the intention of being a manned guided missile. With kamikaze, you don't need computers, you just need a person willing to die. The Japanese also had manned torpedoes, called kaiten. They had manned rockets, called baka bombs. Bakayaru means you're crazy. So the baka bomb is a rocket you get into. It's dropped from a plane. You glide. You see the enemy fleet. You hit the rocket engine right into the American ship. Now, this is all planned. The Kamikaze Corps was very well organized. That's not accidental. The Arabs, like the Japanese, used the willingness to die of their own people to achieve victory. If you have an enemy that doesn't care about living through the battle, they're going to be able to do things that you're probably not going to be able to do. Most Americans don't want to die. I'll quote George S. Patton, and excuse me, it's going to be a little blue. I don't want you to die for your country. I want you to make that other dumb son of a bitch die for his country. That's the American way of fighting. It's a quote, okay? It's a quote. He's so bad. The idea that Americans have is we're going to live. We're going to kill the enemy and go home and live in freedom. But the willingness of the Arabs to die, and Muslim soldiers in general, there are groups that don't want to die, sure. But there is at least enough soldiers within any given unit of Islamic soldiery who are willing to die right here, right now, because they're going to go to the happy part of paradise. The last thing in this world may be a fireball as you hit a building with your plane, but then you expect to be pleasured forevermore by the beautiful, God-given women. So, with this, do I talk about the Hashisha? Yes, I do. I will. Okay. The word assassin comes from a medieval Arab word called Hashishan. In Iraq, on the Iraqi-Iranian border, in the Zagros Mountains, there's a mountain called Alamut. On that mountain is established a community led by a guy named Hassan-e-Sabah. Hassan-e-Sabah establishes a community of young men and women, mostly men. They may have had women, I don't know for sure. But a young man would train in stealth, train in infiltration, train in disguise, train in false body language, train in how to die, train in all sorts of exotic knowledges so they could impersonate people who have, are like courtiers or special scholars. And during the time of the height of the Islamic civilization 1,000 years ago, anyone who contracted with Hassan-e-Sabah for a Hashishan would have one of these highly trained individuals, dealers of death. They learned the weak spots of the human body. Target the person they want to die. On the last night before their mission, the Hashishan would be given the most wonderful bit of food. And they would be given hashish. Hashish is a pasty narcotic drug that you smoke. and it's like the super devil's lettuce intensified. And what they do with it is they have a night of earthly delights. What it is a taste of paradise. Whatever they personally crave the most, they get. This is part of their training. So the teachers know what if they want sex, they get sex. If they want other things, so they get a taste of heaven with the hashish and with the other experiences of that. And then they go out and they have their dagger, and they're going to kill with their assassin's dagger, and they're probably going to die. They're willing to give their life right now, right here, to kill their target. So the Hashishan go one step further. They're assassins for hire. The word assassin comes from Hashishan. And they're willing to do it because these people are raised and brainwashed to be assassins. But they're also given the taste of paradise with the drug and with the other experiences. So they already know what paradise is like because they've experienced it. So, being desert tough and being willing to die so you go to paradise leads the Arabs to have, up till that point, the largest land empire in the world, which is saying quite a lot. And it's only the Franks at the Battle of Tours that stopped them. Next time, we'll talk more about the various Islamic societies that are set up. In the meantime, any questions, comments, or thoughts? Thank you for your attention. You may talk among yourselves.